Who said that? Well, thanks so much, Harold, for that kind and fictitious introduction. It really is an honor to be here today. I've done a lot of things in my life, but where I came from, I believe, in every way has made me who I am. I grew up in a very, very working-class Irish Catholic neighborhood in Boston. The kind of things I learned back then has stood me in good stead throughout my career as a Marine enlisted, as well as officer, and certainly as I think 6 or 7 weeks in the job as the Secretary of Homeland Security. When I grew up there, part of this foundational experience, when I grew up in Boston, certainly every man in my life was either a World War II or a Korean War veteran, and every one of them, with the exception of very, very few, when they came home, either became a firefighter or a policeman. My uncle, in fact, World War II vet, Navy, my Uncle Russell, retired as a Boston firefighter. And as I learned early and often, that Boston's Local 7, Local 18 is in fact the best IAFF local there is in the country. No? How am I doing, Ed? So, all right? Yeah. But seriously, I mean, it's a life of service. I don't think I've ever given a speech as a Marine, and certainly now as a Secretary, that when I talked about Marines and military, I didn't also add firefighters and policemen, because we all have the same DNA. It's a DNA of service to the nation, to the neighborhood. And frankly, the only time I've ever heard anyone say anything negative about a firefighter in my life usually came, or always came, from a Boston policeman for some reason. But that just might be jealousy, right? I don't have to tell you as first responders how important you are to our neighborhoods, to our small towns, to our cities. 911, I mean, on that terrible day, 343 firefighters lost their lives. You know, I gave a speech at the USS Intrepid Memorial in New York City. And it was a Memorial Day speech, and of course I was talking about sacrifice, and as I said, I always talk about the sacrifice not only of military people, but of first responders, of police. And right on that highway, I don't know exactly which highway it was, but the organizers told me that on 9/11, on that day, in the shadow of the Intrepid, a couple of 300 of those firefighters that were rushing to the World Trade Towers would have passed by. And as I said, I thought probably not one of them hesitated to get on those fire trucks that day and rush to that horrible situation. They probably all knew that day would be a little different than the normal day as a New York firefighter. Not one of them probably ever assumed for a second that he or she would lose their lives, but 343 of them did. And again, had they known that they were about to lose their lives, I don't think a single one of them would not have gotten on the fire truck and rushed to that terrible conflagration that day. We see the same kind of dedication every day in small towns across America, hurricanes and all the rest of the things that men and women like you deal with routinely. It's a dangerous calling for sure. I think this year alone, 15 or so firefighters have lost their lives. And to them and to their families and to their compadres, I offer my deepest sympathies. But it's not just the physical rigors of the job or the inherent dangers, it's the emotional toll. I remember after the Boston marathon bombing, I was asked, and I was thrilled and honored to be asked to go to Boston and speak to a number of the Boston firefighters and police officers who were there and saw the carnage up front. Not that you ever get used to it, but certainly in my life as a Marine in Iraq, I'd seen that kind of thing more than once in IED attacks and things like that. And for whatever reason, I think I contributed a little bit to help them understand that what they were feeling about what they saw that day, they'll never get over. But to remember that what is most important is that they were there to help and do the best they can. And if they needed to seek help to deal with that kind of thing. I was, as I say, tremendously honored to have been given the opportunity to do that. But again, people like you, everyone in our country respects, admires, and never wants to see you professionally, but knows if they ever needed you professionally, you'd be there in a nanosecond. secure in this nation, and I concern myself with not only the fight against terrorism, narco-terrorism, things like that, but obviously anything and everything that has to do with natural disasters that could hit our country, and even cyber attacks that could do things to our infrastructure to bring it down. And people like you, even though I'm at clearly a higher level in terms of monitoring the nation, it's people like you that would be first on the scene, whether it's God forbid, a meltdown of a power plant, the destruction of a bridge type thing, or airline crashes. All of it adds up to you're the first line of defense, and then the rest of us try to come and help out. I've learned in this job, and it doesn't surprise me, that my department, the Department of Homeland Security, and the nation's firefighters and first responders have a tremendously close relationship. I value that relationship and all the expertise that you bring to the problem of safeguarding the nation. I believe it's crucial that you have the tools to do your jobs and to keep your community safe. And through the partnership and grants and the relationship, particularly with my organization, FEMA, I think for the most part today, stronger than ever, is that relationship, and more ready and more effectively are we all able to respond to crises as they develop. As I say, we do have a fair amount of money tied up in grants. Those are good grants. I know they support in many ways staffing, equipment, training, and those will, in my estimation, continue as they must always continue. Did I say something right? I guess I said something right, so let me let me try that again. I think they should always continue. It's too important. It's just too important. We are at Homeland Security committed to supporting you, our first responders, and we'll continue to support you. And as I say, we should never mix politics with taking care of people in our communities. You are a crucial part of our communities, and as I say, we'll always do the best we can to support you. Now, I hadn't planned on doing this, but if you want, I could maybe field a question or two that might be on your mind. I know it's always dangerous because I know we have press in the room, and but I know the Boston Globe would never misrepresent what I say. So I'll go ahead and, if you want, offer a question or two, maybe from the front.
I would like to ask, if I may, Secretary, straightforward.
Sergeant actually was the title I love the most.
Okay.
Yeah.
No. SAFER and the FIRE Act are due to expire at the end of the year. We need to reauthorize them. Will your Homeland Security and you as the Secretary either be permitted or willing to express your view to Congress that these are two crucial programs that will keep our members not only working, but equipped and able to protect their communities?
And I would tell you here, and you can quote me, that I will work, if it's entirely in my lane to make that decision, the decision's made. If it's not in my lane to make the decision, I'll work effortlessly or tirelessly to inform the right people to make the right decision. Now that, of course, only applies to Local 718. Maybe one more? I can barely see anyone.
Remember, he said something.
There's somebody.
Where?
All the way in the back.
Stand up.
Go ahead and yell it out, and I'll repeat it. No. You're not a firefighter, though.
Right there. All right, stand
Okay,
up,
yeah,
brother.
yes, sir.
Thanks for coming, sir. Number one. Have you spoken to President Trump about firefighters and safety at this point?
The question was, have I spoken to President Trump about firefighters and first responders at this point? I would tell you this, and I don't, statistically, half the people in this room did not vote for President Trump. The kind of people that are in this room, though, I know, because they're the kind of people I grew up with and think the most of in life. And once the election is over, people like us become Americans as opposed to Democrats and Republicans. We become Americans, and it's all about America, it's all about the community, it's all about taking care of each other. This president is extremely interested in protecting the homeland. You've heard him say it. He's empowered Secretary Mattis and all of the associated intelligence agencies to redouble their efforts to go after those who would do us harm in the away game, that is overseas. And for sure has given me no uncertain instructions to protect this homeland and what we call the home game. He's interested, and you've heard what he's said about police officers. You can bet he means the same thing about first responders of all kinds. The kind of people, the grassroots people that take care of our citizens at the lowest level, the community, the neighborhood level, are as important to him as the aircraft carriers and the fighter planes that DOD protects us with. So he's an extremely focused man on protecting our homeland, all of our people, our borders, and our citizens, as I say. So now you have a fan in President Trump, to say the least. You have a fan. Maybe one more. Go ahead, sir.
President Trump wants to lower the government and reduce the workers, but speaking from the federal firefighters on the air base, the resource camps, and the naval stations, federal firefighters, our numbers are going down more and more every year. We do more with less on the air base. IAFF has had our back trying to fight our causes, but when we hear that, the numbers going down, those numbers, federal firefighters are also amongst those numbers. We have trouble filling up our bases. Homeland Security work with IAFF and provide some type of pressure to bump up our numbers to help us get more bodies on the rigs to protect our bases, which directly deal with Homeland Security as well.
The question here is about, it revolves really around Mr. Trump's federal pay freeze and then the situation in the federal firefighting force on our bases and stations. Have I got it pretty well?
Well, we know the freeze doesn't apply. We're exempted to that. But aside from that, every year, even before the freeze, leading up to this year, the last 5 to 10 years, federal firefighters, fire departments have been going, our numbers have been going down lower and lower and lower. And we're having trouble, filling up the engines like we used to. Has had us shrunk down, but our numbers are
Okay. Yeah.
and we're just looking for help to get more numbers boosted up for federal bases and do our job.
Okay, well, thanks for that. Two things. My son Robert, when he was serving in Afghanistan, had a magnificent platoon of Marine infantrymen that he served with, and 4 of them, oddly enough, 4 of them have become federal firefighters. All of them are Facebook friends with my wife, and all of them tell me every day about this problem, believe it or not, but I've never heard it put in the sense that this is kind of a force-wide thing. So all I can say is I'll look into it, but I won't be able to escape it because these guys are always on Facebook with my wife, and she drives me just about crazy with these kind of things. So I'll because it's the right thing to do, let me look into it, and I'll somehow get back to you, either as a group or individually. So it's important, and I didn't realize that. But there is, as you know, a hiring freeze, and that's, I think, just so we can catch our breath and see how many people we have, how many people we need. But it will cause, in the larger force, a little bit of delay in getting some programs done. But I'll get back to you. And with that, it's just been terrific. Yes, sir, Harold.
Would you allow one more question?
Of course, yeah.
Would you? Because I wouldn't be doing my job. The president issued an executive order concerning sanctuary cities, and the issue was withholding federal resources in those cities, but he excluded law enforcement. We think and believe that he likely would interpret it to be public safety. The question to you, sirs, I believe you have responsibility for that. Can we look for, to the extent that that is implemented, that exemption would apply to firefighters, public safety, as well as law enforcement, should the need be to support that executive order.
Okay, it's a great question, actually. I'm surprised it wasn't the first one. Sanctuary cities, one of the things that I've been tasked to do, at least on the law enforcement side, is to define what a sanctuary city is, or state, or municipality. What I get, and I've only been in this job, certainly less than 2 months, but when I travel around or interact with law enforcement, all of the law enforcement people tell me, and I've been down on the border and met with a large number in McAllen, Texas, a couple of weeks ago, several weeks ago now. Went down to Nogales, Arizona, and then San Diego, again, meeting with sheriffs and police, local police. And virtually all of them have said, Secretary, we have elected officials that have different perspective on how to protect the community than I do, or than we do as police officers, and by extension, anyone in public safety. Please don't sort of overreact to their claims about sanctuary cities. What the President has tasked me to do with the Department of Justice is to define exactly what a sanctuary city or state or whatever is, and what that means. Because, again, the input I get is an awful lot of the mayors, governors, other people are saying these things, but not really following through on them. So once we decide or define what a sanctuary city is, if you fall into that category, it would be possible, as an example, if I am paying a municipality with federal funds to cooperate with, say, ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, to cooperate with them so that we can take individuals out of the community that have been convicted of crimes, which is what we routinely do. And if we're paying for that service, and as an aside, it's beyond my comprehension, and I said this to the 48 governors of 48 states that I talked to Sunday before last, it's inconceivable to me why someone would not want, free of charge, for me to come, or my people to come, and remove a convicted felon, sometimes multiple convictions, illegal alien, why they would not want me to come and remove that person from their city, state, neighborhood. Inconceivable to me, but the reality is it does in fact happen. So my point is, if once we define what a sanctuary city is, and I am paying that city, municipality, to cooperate with the federal authorities, which they should do by law anyways, and for the good of their neighborhoods, if they're not doing it, then it would be pointless for me to pay them the money. I don't think, in my view, that extends right now to anything other than if I am assisting them financially to do something and they're not doing it, then there'd be no point in giving them the money. But I don't know where this will come out, but in my view, I don't think, if it's up to me, that it would apply to men and women that are in public safety in general. Okay? Best I can do. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.